So recently I just finished my old sketchbook, and you know what that means? It's officially time to start a new one. And today I'll be taking you along with me while I paint the cover of this sketchbook. The sketchbook is actually a little different from my older ones, which I didn't really expect. It comes with a little booklet at the back of the sketchbook, and it tells you like a bunch of stuff that I don't even know about. It tells you about film and animation actually, which is kind of cool. And it also comes with a blue pocket at the end of the sketchbook. Since the first page isn't technically blank, it'll be harder to come up with the title page, and it takes a few pages in to actually get to a white page, which is slightly annoying, but you know, that's for future me to think about. Cause in this video, we're gonna be painting the cover. I'll be using my blue Prismacolor color erase, some more cheap brushes that I have laying around, some acrylic paints in primary colors, and also a lot of white acrylic paint. I have two cause I'm running low on the other one. And with that, let's get sketching. So unsurprisingly, right off the bat, I have to switch to a 2B pencil because my Prismacolor color erase wasn't showing up on the cover at all. I tried using white, but it left like weird patches when I tried to erase it, so that got scrapped. So if you're anything like me and you're right-handed, you know that drawing on the far side of the sketchbook can be really annoying because your hand keeps falling off the book and then you get this like weird expression that you weren't going for. So I did add a book just for better leverage overall. For the sketch, I did have a clear picture in my head of what I wanted to look like, but despite all of that planning, I still had a lot of trouble with the sketch. For some reason, it just didn't look the way I wanted it to look, and to be honest, I should have thumbnailed this before I go for the actual thing, but hey, stupid mistakes. And it also took me a couple tries for me to actually be happy with the sketch, and you didn't see all the tries because I cut most of them out because otherwise we're gonna be here forever. And I didn't want it to be too stiff. I want it to be very flowy, very fluid. That proves to be way more difficult than I thought it was gonna be. I guess the fact that I didn't warm up before I actually did this sketch results in a very stiff first couple sketches. You don't see those sketches because I cut those out because those are pretty stiff, but in the end I did get kind of what I was looking for. It took me a couple tries, of course, but I think it was worth it. I also did try to keep the sketch pretty simple because I know when it comes to coloring, it's gonna be like a nightmare if I add like a bunch of little details. So I did try to keep everything blocky as much as possible so that there wouldn't be too many details to paint. One thing I could have done differently though is to move the sketch a little bit to the left because it seems like it's off center. So to salvage this, I did add a number 10 at the corner left so I can fill a space. And also it was kind of like in my brain that I was gonna do it anyway, so I have to add it now because otherwise I'm gonna forget about it. And the final touch that I add to make the whole piece looks more cohesive, I did add headphone wires that kind of swoops from like my headphones around my body and kind of ends up at my butt. Initially there was going to be a phone, but I end up forgetting about it and I didn't really want to paint a phone because I didn't want to mix more colors, so I kind of left that off and kind of have the wire just swoops in like a weird motion. I don't know, it's just spur of the moment, which I think doesn't look too bad, but it didn't look great. Oh, and I forgot to add like the little hashtag thing just to fill a little bit more space. And I kind of think it looks kind of cute. So now onto the coloring. I must say that painting this is definitely my favorite part in the entire piece. I mean, it's like adding colors. Sketching, it wasn't really that fun. And I was genuinely surprised when I laid down my first wash of acrylic paint on the cover of the sketchbook. Like, oh my gosh, I didn't think it was gonna be this opaque. It only took me like 2 layers just to get it super opaque, but oh my god. When I was putting this down, I wasn't expecting that at all. And I was like, whoa, wasn't expecting that. Initially, there are some spaces that took more than 2 to 3 layers, but other than that, it's pretty opaque, and I'm really impressed. When I was coloring, I also did leave some lines for the eyes and the mouth and the nose, so just so I wouldn't get lost when I was painting other things, you know? And I mean, it did look kind of weird now, and further on in the video, I did forget where the chin was, and the face kind of ended up looking a little big, but that's okay. And when I was coloring the legs, it did took more layers than I thought it was gonna, probably because I didn't water it down with a little bit of water, which I did in the face just a little bit because I didn't know how the sketchbook cover is gonna react to it because it is technically paper. But I did make sure to use just a little bit of it so like the paint is a little bit smoother. I I think I mixed the skin tone a little bit too light, even though I'm technically a very pale person. I'm not like that pale. In my head, I'm kind of thinking like semi-purple-y, red-ish, so it kind of looks like I have a suntan or something. I don't know. Kind of looks like I got sunburned or something, but I didn't went with that, and I went for pale skin instead. I wasn't expecting that because I think it would pop too much on the dark cover, but it ended up working really well, so I'm not complaining. For the blush, I did use a little bit of coral-y, pink-y color because I didn't want the blush to be too much on the orange side. I wanted it to be more on the pink side because since my whole color scheme is like pink, I didn't want my face to stray too much from what I was hoping for. And then it comes to blending, which is a hassle because the acrylic paint underneath it already dried and I have to put down new acrylic paint, and I was scared that it's gonna have this weird double tone effect. Dry acrylic paint is gonna look different from the wets, so I was really concerned about that, but I think it looked okay for the blush because I wasn't that experienced with blending out acrylic paint. And there's when I added the shadow underneath her chin, which is way too low, mind you, so it makes my face look huge. And the funny thing is, I didn't even realize that till like the end of the drawing, and I'm like, oh, I can't fix that. Now I know that my shirt color and my skin tone is very similar. From afar, it kind of looks like I'm wearing skin, but that is something I try to avoid while painting this. It's because I have my hoodie that is very close to my skin tone, and I try to change it up a little bit. The actual thing is kind of coral color, and I didn't want to go down that route because for some reason when I keep mixing coral, it ended up being orange, and I'm like, what the heck? Maybe it's because my knowledge on color theory isn't that strong. So then I have to go for a more pinky side instead, but even then it still looked kind of close to my skin tone unless I shade it, so yeah. And mixing the shirt color was a mistake because I didn't mix enough, and then I have to mix more, and I was scared that the color isn't even gonna match, but in the end it looked pretty close, so I wasn't really concerned about that. So now we are moving on to coloring the hair, and I knew I wanted it to be light, but the contrast between the color that I'm laying down right now and the background didn't really look too good. It just looked really chalky for some reason, and I didn't like how that looked. And I was going for a light color because I wanted to match with the overall pastelness of the picture, but in this case it just didn't really work. And the acrylic paint is also messing with me because when it's wet it looked very dark, but when it dries it turns into this gray muddy color. It looks like I have a full head of gray hair, and it didn't even look brown. So then I have to mix a new color to go in with it, and it looked a whole lot better when I put like a darker color on top of that navy blue background. It just looked so much better. So I wanted my shorts to be a blue pastel color because that's the color of the shorts I own. But for this one, I don't know why, but it just looked a little too blue, so I did tone it down with a lighter blue just to make it look pastel, because for some reason this blue just looks way too bright for me. And I know on screen it looks kind of white, but I swear it's blue. Now I'm going in with another layer of skin tone on my legs because they do look very patchy. And can we just talk about those legs real quick? Like, they look so good. After that, I add a little bit of blush just when the acrylic paint is still wet. I mean, it doesn't really make a difference to be honest, but I just want to put it out there. And I also add another layer of paint onto the arm because it looks a little patchy, and then I also added some blush, just the same way I did with all the other blushes. I also went in and colored in the headphones with a very kind of magenta-esque, and I also did use the same colors to shade in my shirt, although I did tone it down with a little bit of white. Here I wanted shading to be dark but not too harsh, if that makes any sense. I want it to be semi-soft, not too distracting from anything, and it was actually coming out nicer than I thought it was gonna be, which is kind of cool. And so now I'm doing what I think is my favorite part when it comes to coloring of any sorts, is to do the shading, especially on the skin. Like, oh my god, it's so satisfying, especially on the legs, just like right there, like where the harsh shadow is. Just love this. Just take it all in. Just take it all in. I also shaded it under my sleeves and also around the face just a little bit. Here I'm adding a little bit more detail to the hair just because it looks kind of flat and I wanted it to look semi-realistic, so I did add a few stray strands here and there. To make the picture a little bit more cohesive, instead of shading the pants with more of a darker blue, I did mix it with a little bit of purple. And I mean, I mixed it with pink, but then it turned out purple because color theory. And I think it looked cool, so I painted it on there, hoping for the best. I colored the shoes with a same color as my hair so that my hair isn't the only darkest thing in the picture. And I think it brings the picture in really well, actually. And since I love wearing high socks, and I definitely love wearing high socks that are colorful, I painted my socks pink just to add to the overall aesthetic of the picture. And plus, I had like a bunch of pink socks. In the end, I was debating whether or not to have the hashtag and the 10 be blue or yellow because I wasn't sure of that. And I ended up going with blue instead because my shorts are blue, and I think those bring it together really well. How many times have I said that in this video? When I was coloring this, I was jumping back and forth way too many times on different sections of the picture. I just have to like sit down and just draw one thing and then just move on to the next, and it just kept jumping around because when you're watching this footage, the sole of the shoe was already colored in white. Is that what it's called? Like the pointy part of the shoe? Yeah, I was a mess when I was recording this. Can you tell? After that, I began to line the piece, which freaking finally, I used a very dark purple to line this. Initially, I was going for a navy blue so it would match the background, so that like it would seem to have blended in with the background just a little bit. But I don't know what I was thinking, and I kind of used purple because I think it was on the palette or something, and I didn't want to mix more colors, so I just used the one I have, and here's what came out of it. And I think it created a very nice touch to the actual piece, and it cleaned up the lines a lot because, as you can see, I left like a lot of in-betweens when I was coloring, and I know that's probably bothering the heck out of you. It was bothering the heck out of me, and when it comes to lining, I was just satisfying, man. And when I was shading the hair in, I accidentally shaded under the hair, which kind of looks weird because the purple isn't dark enough to counteract with the brown, and so it looked light on the hair. I mean, I'm not complaining. I actually kind of liked how it turned out. It looked very painterly. It reminds me of like one of those digital paintings that I saw on Instagram, and I'm like, how do you do that? And I guess I just made mine. Lastly, I couldn't forget the highlights. I actually used the same brown that didn't work before, and to use that to highlight it, it actually worked out really well. And also I'm like reusing the colors because I had a lot of that color on my palette and I didn't want it to go to waste, so I used it here. And I used a little bit of navy blue to just line underneath the letters just to make it pop a little bit more. I don't know if this is like a good choice or if it's a bad choice, but hey, I did it, so. And can you see this attempt of me trying to paint this little note with that huge ass brush? I mean, in this entire thing, I used a tiny brush. I know you're probably screaming at the screen for me to use a bigger brush, and I don't know why I didn't. The entire painting, I was using this one small brush, and I didn't even change anything. I just used it, yeah. And last but not least, I use a white Jelly Roll gel pen to line in my shoelaces because the shoelaces are white, and to also bring out any little detail that the shoe has because it's kind of buried right now. And now for the most nerve-wracking part, the wire. And I mean, I try to be flowy, and I tried not to flick my wrist too much. I kind of try to imitate the sketch line, but I did kind of mess it up a little bit. I don't think you guys can see it in here, but it's just, it just wasn't what I was hoping for. And in the end, you can't really notice it. It's only me, but it still bothers me just a little bit, you know, that little artist thing that nobody else can see, only the artist can see it. It's bothering me. And for some added touch, and I also think it's kind of empty, I added the word sketchbook number 10 on the spine of the sketchbook, which I think it looks kind of neat and kind of cool when you all put it on like a shelf, and when you see it all aligned like sketchbook or 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and it looks kind of cool, okay? So that's kind of why I did it, and it's kind of like a theme now. I don't think I have the footage here, but I did change the color of the text just to make it a little bit darker so you can kind of see it from afar and you don't have to squint. And the one final thing which I did at the last minute is I took my white Jelly Roll gel pen and lined the entire character with it. I don't know what makes me to make that decision, but I think it's just kind of like a spur of the moment, and I think the character didn't pop enough to me, and I kind of wanted to give that finishing touch. It just looks like it's missing something, so I just added that, and I actually kind of like how it looked with the outline in white. And with that, our sketchbook is complete. I really like how it turned out, actually. Took a lot longer than I thought too. And so now it comes to the question, what will I draw for my title page? But that is a story for another time. Thank you everybody so much for watching. I hope you guys liked this video and draw along. And I'll see you guys in my next video. Bye bye.